2, 3, 4, 1, 2, ready.
Down, turn it down. Down, turn it down. Charles Rouse Jr. His father is Charles Rouse Sr., the renowned jazz player. So let's give him a clap praise, yeah? Yes. And I know you've probably been asked this question, but I'm gonna start right off with this question. What was it like to be in the midst of that giant?
Well, growing up, I was around like many of his peers, Miles Davis, Coltrane, Thelonious Monk, Art Blakey,
Oh my goodness.
Johnny Griffith, all of the greats at that time during that era of the 60s, that bebop
Yes.
era. And my mother was the original dancer in the Cotton Club in Savoy with Lita Horne.
Oh my goodness.
And so being the only child,
Right.
I had to be there whether I wanted to or not.
Right.
So I was feeling vibrations and energies that I didn't know what was happening subliminally, but I was absorbing them, and I started to get interested in the music business, and I started playing drums. A little older than that young man, I think.
Right. That was kind of like a flashback for you, huh?
He's at the right age, and I started studying when I was about six years old with Max Roach and a lot of the great jazz musicians.
Now, when did you really, if you, I know you did, but when did you realize that you was in the midst of all this greatness?
Probably about 45 years later.
Right.
I grew up and, my parents was like any other parents. They were just my parents, They took me bike riding and fishing and all that type stuff. But, I really didn't know what they were involved into and what they were contributing to the world until much later when I decided to become a professional.
Okay.
I started doing my homework. I didn't do too much in high school, so I started studying real strongly about what I was getting into, and ironically, my mom and dad popped up.
Okay, right. So we got a few clips of his dad. When you get a chance to back in the studio there to pull up some of those clips, so we kind of talk a little bit about when those clips pop up. But you said 44 years later, but I want to take a little journey with you. Mm-hmm. They taking you to the clubs or to the sets back then, and you sitting around as a young man. What was that like?
Well, I was 6, 7 years old, and I had to stay back in the dressing rooms, and the Rothschild, the jazz baroness, used to babysit me.
Right.
And again, they was just my father's friends. They just, they was playing funny instruments, and they was talking funny and acting funny.
Right.
So, I just thought that everything was normal.
Right.
But as time went on, again, I sat around Monk. My father was with Monk for a decade and a half.
Oh my goodness.
He was with Thelonious from 1959 to early 1970s.
Now, did he ever tell you about what was that like, Mr. Monk teaching him how to play an instrument or driving him? Hey, you ain't hit that note right enough. You need to do something different.
No, Monk, Dad used to tell me that Thelonious was a musician.
Okay, now share with us what that means.
Well, basically, a musician is just what it is.
Okay.
He's a musician. There's no compromise.
Oh, okay.
It's not a want, it's a need. Thelonious was the type of guy, he handpicked all his musicians.
Oh my goodness.
So he knew what he wanted to hear.
Right.
He knew what, he was a teacher to many of the jazz greats. John Coltrane was in his band.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Sonny Rollins was in his band.
Right.
My father was the longest run of saxophonists. Johnny Griffith was in his band. And, Thelonious was the type of musician where he would challenge you. He wouldn't say things to you like, you should be able to do this, or why don't you do this? You know, he would just say, this is what I want in my music, and this is what I want to hear, and go play it. You know, it wasn't anything in his head that you couldn't be able to express from that instrument if you really connected with it. You know, so, you know.
Did your dad ever talk about to you, I'm just tired of this sax, I'm putting it down?
No, that wasn't happening.
That wasn't happening.
When I grew up, my father's horn never was in the case.
Okay.
When it was at home, it was in a music stand, sitting somewhere in the house.
Right.
Because he believes that you had to truly be able to connect with your instrument in order to be able to truly express yourself.
Right.
An instrument is an extension of you. So the closer you get, the more you'll be able to express yourself. So, the less you keep it in your mouth, the less you can play.
Exactly. Right.
So that was his philosophy of how he looked at the instrument, in reference to what his individuality wanted to be, to express,
Right.
So, it was funny. I mean, a lot of time people say, well, your father's in the music business, it should be easy. It was the opposite.
It's the opposite.
Because
share a little bit why it was the opposite.
Well, he respected the art so highly that, again, there was no compromise, whether I was his son or not.
Okay.
You had to learn how to play it right. And if you create bad habits, you got to sacrifice and go back and correct it. Mm-hmm. It's a lifelong journey to learn and to grow and to truly try to express yourself. There's a process of development that you have to go through, and you have to bump your head,
right?
But again, he was the type of guy where he knew if he wanted it. I wasn't a superhuman guy. If I wanted it, I would bump my head. I would get what I need to get.
Right.
And he wasn't giving up anything in reference to that. So, I mean, he was the type of father, he started studying. I started studying when I was 6. He didn't hear me play until I was 17.
My goodness.
But he put me in the element of his peers that if I was capable, I would receive what I needed. Right. It was on me to take it and do what I needed to do. So he gave me some time, He gave me some time.
Let you develop a little bit of something. Was that the process? Well,
he didn't want to hear how I felt about it. He wanted his peers to tell him whether I had it or not, or I had the possibility. That's what he was basing it on. Forget what I was saying. I was young and
right.
Right. You know what I mean? Yeah, Dad, I got it. You know what I mean? He wasn't going for that.
Right.
So again, as much as it's perceived that, being in the business as your parents are, whatever, that it's easy, sometimes, and most of the time, it's not as easy as they think, because your parents, being your parents, they want the best for you, and they want you to be the best you can be. And if you're in the same field that they are, they know the road you got to go down. Right. They know what you have to do. They know what is going to come before you. Mm-hmm. And they're going to prepare you best as they can. Again, you can't cheat on them because they know the ropes.
They know it, right?
And I've tried a few games.
Right? Did you try some?
And
you want to share one of the ones? You want to share one of them?
Well,
I told you I might get personal. He said, "Go ahead."
Well, I worked many years with this organist, Charles Erlin.
Okay.
And George Benson, and we had just finished like a 30-nighter on the road, and I ended up in Milwaukee, Illinois, actually at the Bud Fest, and I was tired, man. We was doing those one-nighters. I was tired. I got in very late at night. I got in the hotel room, and the road manager just say, "Sound check, 10 o'clock in the morning." I'm mumbling. He knocks on the door at 9 in the morning, say, "Bus is leaving in about 15 minutes," and I'm not ready for it.
You ain't ready.
I'm not ready, man. I was in my mid-20s, I think.
Right.
So I said, man, if anybody can get me out of this, my old man can get me
Right.
out of it. He's got to have some answers for this.
Right.
So I called back to New York and I called my father and I said, Dad, he says, what's going on, son? I said, man, I just did like 30 nights. I'm tired, man. You know what I mean? I have to go on and do a sound check and I'm tired. The phone was silent. He didn't say anything. He says, and so I'm saying, you know, so what do I do? He said, son, you got 3 options. He said, one thing we know you're gonna do, you're gonna have to work. That's one thing we know. He said, now the other 2 is your choice. You can either do what you love to do and work, or you can do what you don't love to do and work.
Gotcha.
So at that point, I just said, and hung the phone up on him.
Right.
Went in the shower, took the shower, and got on the bus to do a
Right.
sound check.
Right, right.
He let me know very definitively that if this is what you want to do, then there's no easy way, buddy.
no easy way,
you know.
yeah.
So I mean, you know, there's many little stories like that. You know, that being young and stuff that I felt that maybe I could get around or I could make it a little easier.
Right, right.
But no, that's the route I have to go and the life I chose. And unfortunately, I'm following them, so I can't trick them.
Right,
you know,
right.
I've tried and it doesn't work. Not in that game, you know.
Right.
So
It didn't work.
no, every time I try, it doesn't work. You know.
Now, when did you pick up your first? Because you're a drummer, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What made you go from the drummer because your dad's a saxophone, right?
Tenor
sax,
saxophone.
and you went into the drum.
Yes. Well, again, like I said, my father's sax never was in the case.
Okay.
So again, you know, I was young. He would be in the bathroom or something,
Right.
and I would sneak over to the horn and I would try to blow the horn.
Right.
But I didn't know that you had to vibrate the reed. I thought you just had to blow into it.
Right.
So after 3 or 4 times, I got frustrated. I don't want to play
Right.
saxophone. I don't want to play saxophone.
Something's wrong with this.
I don't,
It ain't working like it.
I don't like that, you know. So I used to go to the Village Vanguard in New York, which is a very historical jazz club down in the Village. And 1 month I was there. I was sitting behind Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers with Lee Morgan.
Heavyweight,
and
son.
Clifford.
My
Clifford
goodness.
And then the next night, you know, I'm sitting behind Elvin Jones and John Coltrane. And I'm sitting in the corner.
Audience said, "Oh, so they feeling it. You brought some giants." Okay.
And the way the Vanguard is set up, you know, because I was young, I couldn't be out where they were smoking and drinking. So
Right.
there was this little black spot that they would sit me in behind the stage, which would be right behind the drummers.
Okay.
And I'd be sitting behind Max and you know, Miles and young Tony, and I was like 6 or 7 years old, and just one night, you know, I was sitting behind Elvin, and he's about as close as you are to me, and he was sweating, man. Him and Elvin and Train, and I guess it was one of those nights, and I just looked at him, man, and I just said, man, this cat's having fun.
Fun, right.
You know, I mean, you know, I'm young, man,
Right.
energized. He's throwing sticks and he's sweating, and I said, wow, man, that looks like fun, right?
Right.
So night was over, and I went up to Dad when he went backstage, and I said, Dad, I didn't even say I wanted to play drums. I said, Dad, I want to do that.
Right there.
You know what I mean? Because I was
right.
6 or 7, and so that was the beginning of the nip. You know,
Okay.
I mean, I got bit after I sat behind Blakey.
Oh my
And
goodness.
he, you know, he would drive me in the corner. You know, I'd be behind him, and my head would be, you know, he's pushing, man.
Right, right.
And so, you know, and he gave me my first ride cymbal. You know, I mean,
Okay.
once my dad let him know I was interested in drums. You know, again, you know, I was like, you know, Dizzy would pat me on the head. I mean, it would be a little Rouse, you know.
Right.
They was friends and
Right,
stuff, you know, and
right,
so,
right.
but, you know, you know, it was all subliminal, man. It didn't hit me until years later when I was playing in certain elements things would come to the forefront, and I'd be like, wow, that's what I was hearing.
Right.
Or I would be in one of my lectures at the colleges or schools with the kids, and I'd be like, wow, that's what he was saying. You know,
Right.
so, the longer I stay into it, the more stuff comes to the forefront that I
Right.
grew up in. And again, I mean, like I said, I had an adventure with Monk that was just,
Powerful,
at a
huh?
young age,
Yeah.
I mean, we always lived together.
Okay.
When we were in the village, we lived on the first floor. Thelonious family lived on the second floor. When we moved to Lincoln Center, we were on the 17th. Thelonious was on the 20th.
Right.
So for all those years, my father was with him.
Right. Always close.
Our families were always close, so
Yeah.
we would go. They would send us to camp. It would King Curtis's kids, all the musicians' kids would be there. So it was always, it was like the mafia. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Tight.
Yeah. So.
I don't know how long you're gonna be in town because I know you're doing this tour for your dad. But like I said earlier, each month we're gonna be doing some on history. So we hope you will bless us again because we can just continue. Go
I'm
ahead.
coming back. Actually, the reason I'm here is you have a really native gentleman here that works with me in the team, O'Meal.
Okay.
He's a Portland native guy, and we've been collaborating for the last couple months. And my father was passed away in his the later part of his life. He passed away here in 1988.
Okay.
And we have been collaborating, and he felt that this would be something really strong and close to me to establish some type of our company is the Rouse legacy,
Right,
which is a legacy of expressing music, education to the youth, producing some festivals. So we're in town now, and we're looking for some sites. We're going to probably do some Rouse in the Park festival, jazz festivals, and maybe looking to maybe bringing in a jazz and blues club, because I have two on the East Coast. So.
Right.
So
That's
and
beautiful.
then I went into this Madison school.
Right.
Man.
Right.
And those kids just blew me away, man. I mean, it's really funny in this time and age to see kids who are being how could I say, intimidated by their peer pressure, and to see young kids to be able to understand that the roots that they came from at such a young age, and being able to sacrifice to go back and to learn that type of music, would just gas me out. And then, but it's obvious, man, because I went to, they invited us to this Blue Note thing, and at the end of the 90-minute clip, after they went through all of the Blue Note artists, Lou Donaldson, all the history, it came all the way up to the present, and the hip hop cats said, look, this is where we're getting it from.
Right,
the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Respect.
You know what I mean? We may not be emulating it note for note, but we're borrowing some of this, we're borrowing some of that, we're borrowing some of this, and we're mixing it with the present of what we're doing, and this is what they're coming up with. So it just lets me know, more than ever, that as much as they try to bury and hide and destroy, our art form, which is America's classical music, which is jazz.
Right.
The more they try to do that, the stronger it gets.
Beautiful.
Because as these generations go on and on, they know in order to really sustain and to move forward, they got to understand where they came from, what's going on, and so they have to go back.
Right.
They have to, and it's there for them.
Well, let's straight talk. No. Let's straight talk.
One, two, three, four, 1, 2, ready?
Bye.